You have to be in rehab May 2nd. Are you going to be there? You'll be there, right? Who's taking you to rehab?
That's so mean.
I'm not joking.
No, you're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Maybe one or two?
No, this is my show now.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Behavioral Arts. My name is Spidey and I use my degree in sociology and psychology, my certifications in criminal interrogation and body language analysis, and over 10 years of experience as an award-winning mentalist to teach people behavioral analysis and practical psychology on stages and TV shows all over the world. In last week's analysis video, we went back in time and looked at an interview where Robert Downey Jr. got up and walked away, cutting the interview short. And there was a lot of really great stuff with facial expressions and body language. And it was really great for me to see the positive response from you towards something that is very valid but not necessarily current. Now, the other thing that happened is I got a lot of messages and comments saying that that interview reminded you of an interview that Lindsay Lohan once did on David Letterman. Now, since I hadn't seen that interview, I went and watched it, and oh boy, is it intense. There is indeed a lot of stuff going on with the body language, and what I like about it is some of it is really subtle, but once you see it, you cannot unsee it. So that's what we're doing in this video. We are taking a walk down memory lane and looking at this interview of Lindsay Lohan on David Letterman, and there is so much going on with the facial expressions and body language. Now, I often like to give you a chance to form your own impression before I give you my analysis, and I think that in this case, that's going to be particularly interesting. So I'm going to show you some of the clips I've selected here, and I want you to focus on two things. One, what signs are you seeing of comfort versus discomfort in her body language? And two, how effectively do you think she's deflecting when she feels uncomfortable or stressed? Take a look.
Well, you look remarkably well. Now, you know I have routinely made jokes about you and the activities, true and otherwise. You're aware of that, right?
I like that you say true and otherwise.
Yeah.
Not true and false.
True and false. Some of the activities are not true at all. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, aren't you supposed to be in rehab now?
Do you not watch anything that goes on?
I do.
A tabloid now?
Now here's what
May 2nd.
I was under the May 2nd.
Yes.
And how long will you be in rehab?
3 months.
How many times have you been in rehab?
Several.
What are they going to work on when you walk through the door?
We didn't discuss this in the pre-interview.
No,
just saying.
but it'll be 3 months, and you
no, I think to be honest, I'm the happiest when I'm working and the healthiest. Thank you.
Now, do you have addiction problems?
Now you sound like Dr. Phil.
Yeah, I'm sorry. When you go to the rehab, what do they do?
We're here for a movie.
We have to what?
Let's stay on the positive.
Oh,
aside from that side of the positive.
Yeah. All right.
Come on now.
No, I have a list here of things that you've endured. Can I run down a few things here?
Oh, can I see them first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
You can read them or not read them.
Okay.
Up here are the
I thought you were going to be nice.
These are the appetizers up here.
I've gone through a lot in life, and I'm looking forward to actually just taking time for me. Mm-hmm. You can't make a joke of it.
That's
so mean.
I'm not joking.
No, you're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Maybe one or two?
No, this is my show now.
How about just one?
No.
Just one?
I don't know.
Just not one. No. All right, you showed up. I mean,
you showed up.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't going to.
You know,
Oh my God.
Well,
okay. Come on, be a father figure.
All right, fine.
I just hope to be in a position like you are and happy and healthy.
Well, I think you will be. That's what I'm saying. You win by taking care of your life because people are rooting against you now. They love
They haven't before?
No, well, but so now the best way to show them that they're wrong
No,
is
I
to
agree.
Turn it all upside down.
Thank you.
Yeah. We'll be right back with Lindsay Lohan, ladies and gentlemen. This opens Friday. Scary movie. You have to be in rehab May 2nd. Are you going to be there? You'll be there, right? Who's taking you to rehab? You don't want to talk about that either, right?
Oh, God. Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon.
And you.
Jimmy and I will drive her to rehab.
No, but I don't want people to think that I'm making a joke of that.
No, you shouldn't make a joke
I'm not.
because this could be good for you. It will be good for you.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
It's not like a joking matter.
No, but I mean, but what in life can't we make light of? Honestly, really, we're all.
No, I'm fine with making light of myself. That's why I want to
you're
walk out with a
good
tag
sport.
on.
Yeah, I mean, we never thought we'd see you again. Honestly, because of the jokes and stuff. But yet, you have enough spine, enough sense of yourself, enough poise to come out here and talk to me.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
There she is.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with Pete Lee, ladies and gentlemen.
All right, there it was. So I'm sure a lot of you have some really interesting observations and insight, and I want to hear them. So right now, take a second, go back and look at it again if you need to, because there's a lot of subtle behaviors happening. And let me know in the comments what you think. I'm particularly interested in moments where you saw the comfort shift. Were there obvious moments where you felt there was discomfort or stress? And as importantly, how effectively do you think she was able to get out of those uncomfortable situations and deflect the conversation and get back on track? So head down to the comments and let me know what you thought. Okay, now it's my turn. So clip by clip, we're gonna dive right in and look at what is going on with Lindsay Lohan during this interview.
Well, you look remarkably well. Now, you know I have routinely made jokes about you and the activities, true and otherwise. You're aware of that, right?
I like that you say true and otherwise.
Yeah.
Not true and false.
True and false. Some of the activities are not true at all. Is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, so first things first, let's look at her body language from the moment this interview starts. This is at a time in Lindsay Lohan's life where she was facing a lot of public criticism. So she doesn't really know how this is gonna go, and I think she's defensive to begin with. If we look at her arms, I believe right off the bat, we're getting a sign of defensiveness. If we look at that left arm, it's going across the abdomen and gripping her right arm like this. Now, this is different from crossed arms. Crossed arms is one of the most misunderstood signals in body language. A lot of people see crossed arms and go, oh, the person's blocking that person out or they're being defensive. Crossed arms is very comfortable. It's a very comfortable way to sit or stand. So yeah, if you see someone having a comfortable conversation, all of a sudden they cross their arms, it might be related to self-comfort or stress, but in most cases, it could be that the room is a little cold, or for some reason we're just more comfortable standing this way. So I wouldn't jump to too many conclusions with simply crossed arms. But this is different. It's not both arms that are crossed, it's one arm going across and gripping on to that other arm. Because our main instinct as human beings is survival and procreation, we are extremely protective of our vital organs and our reproductive organs on a very instinctual level. Now, since we're also one of the only species on this planet whose main organs are completely exposed with nothing to defend them, we are once again extremely defensive of this area when we feel threatened. Now, when men get defensive or uncomfortable, we often see something that in body language we call fig leafing. This is when the hands go down right in front of the genital area and protect it. And we see this subtly happen sometimes when a man is feeling a little uncomfortable. But for women, the instinct tends to lean a little bit more towards protecting the upper reproductive organs, where the baby would be. So we often see when a woman's body language shifts from comfort to discomfort, one arm goes across and just blocks the abdomen. Now, what's interesting with her, it's not just the arm going across, it's also that thumb behind the arm, and this is more consistent with a gripping or self-soothing gesture. And we're going to talk a lot about self-soothing today, but notice how it's not just this, it's this. And we're seeing a little bit of tension there in that hand. So I do think she's feeling a little defensive and bracing herself for some uncomfortable questions right off the bat. Now, when Letterman says you look remarkably well, we see two things that suggest a slightly negative reaction. The first is a smile that is very consistent with a polite smile. Now, I'm going to tread softly when it comes to real versus polite smiles when it comes to Lindsay Lohan, because she's obviously had some cosmetic surgery on her face, and this does limit the movements and motions I would expect to see with a real genuine smile, where the corners of the mouths are pulled up and we see wrinkling or crow's feet on the sides of the eyes. This is known otherwise as a Duchenne smile, and when people have had Botox or filler on the face, we see less of those telltale signs. But I think most of us would agree as we look at that smile that she gives him, even if we forget the crow's feet, forget the wrinkling, it just seems like a very polite smile, not a genuine one. We can almost feel that. There are moments later in the interview where she's gonna laugh, And we see a lot more genuine joy than in that moment. But the second thing we see, and it's unmistakable, is distancing or postural retreating. We literally see her, the moment he says that, move back. And this is something that we do subconsciously when we're trying to put distance between us and the source of something negative. This could be skepticism, like if we don't believe something. It could be shock, surprise, but it's rarely a good thing. So in this moment, we see her with that polite smile and just kind of going back, and she doesn't say anything. So I think he's just taken aback by that statement. Then he says that he's made some statements about her that are true or otherwise. And although it's meant as a joke, it's a great example of psychological distancing. He's not saying truth or lies, true or false, because these are such negative words. He's saying otherwise, distancing himself from some lies or untruthful things he may have said at her expense. She immediately jumps in and says, I like how you say true and otherwise, and corrects him by saying true and false. And we can see this chin kind of coming forward, and she's very assertive with that. She almost spits it out a little. We lose that kind of positive vibe for just 1 sec because it does hurt her that these lies were spread about her. So she kind of corrects the record there and says true or false. And there's a little bit more emphasis, a little more tension, a little more seriousness there than with some of the other comments in this interview. He then concedes to her correction and he says, some of these things weren't true at all. And she goes, yeah. And look at what happens when she says that. One, her tone drops a lot. It's almost like muttered, like, yeah, it's very soft. And second, we see a slow blink, an eye block. She closed her eyes for a second and she opens it up as saying, yeah.
The activities are not true at all, is that right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, eye blocking is something that there's a lot of research on, and what we know for sure is that when we eye block, and slow blinking is part of eye blocking behavior, we are internalizing thought. So some of us do it when we're really trying to think of something or think back. We close our eyes like this. But some also do it when they're trying to block out a thought, when they're trying to just think about something else and they don't want to face this thing that someone else is talking about. And we even see this behavior in blind children. When they're really concentrating on something or when they're given bad news, they close their eyes. Some even bring their hand up like this. Now think about that. They don't have a need to close their eyes, and it's not like they observe this behavior in others and learn to do it. So we know that this behavior is deeply instinctual. And I think in her case, it's consistent with her correcting the record and saying true and false. These false lies that were spread about her are hurting her, which is why when he says these were false, she's going, yeah. She doesn't want to face it. And that kind of lowered tone is usually consistent with something that gets us really emotional, and we get that tone drop when someone gets emotional. So that's what we're seeing consistent with that eye block. Finally, there's a behavior that we're definitely seeing here, but we're going to see consistently throughout this interview, where she looks to the audience in moments of reaction. And she looks a little further past where the audience would be, off to the further right. And I don't know if that's because there's someone of importance sitting there, or because maybe like right in front of her, there might be a camera or a strong light. So she sees more of the audience off to her right, but we often get these glances over all the way to the right. And these are called confirmation glances, and they happen a lot with perception management. Obviously, once again, given all the rumors out there, it's very important to her to come off well, to kind of clean some of the rumors that are out there. So I think a lot of the times she's checking in with the audience because she wants to connect with them, and those are just those confirmation glances that we're getting. All right, now we're gonna move on and look at some subtle but really important details in her nonverbal communication and some masterful ways that she handled this interview. But before we do me a huge favor, hit that like button. It really helps get these videos out there. Hit that subscribe button, turn those notifications on for more body language and practical psychology.
Now, aren't you supposed to be in rehab now?
Do you not watch anything that goes on?
I do.
A tabloid now?
Now here's what
May 2nd.
I was under the May 2nd.
Yes.
And how long will you be in rehab?
3 months.
How many times have you been in rehab?
Several.
What are they going to work on when you walk through the door?
We didn't discuss this in the pre-interview.
No,
Just saying.
but it'll be 3 months, and you
no, I think to be honest, I'm the happiest when I'm working and the healthiest, and I think this is an opportunity for me to, focus on what I love in life. And I don't think it's a bad thing. I think it's a blessing. And
all right, once again, we have a visible mood shift there that I think anyone who has even studied body language a little bit would have picked up on, and I'm sure a lot of you already commented on it. The moment he brings up rehab, there's an instant mood shift. She's laughing, and we just see that mood drop as she looks at him. We again see her back up with her head like this again, so we're getting that postural retreat. And her answer has quite a bit of sass here. As she says, "Do you not watch anything?" we see this kind of sassy head gesture with those little subtle chin thrusts as she's talking in that moment. And we could tell even in her tonality that she's biting back a little bit here. It's not overly uncomfortable from her, but we could see that she didn't like that question at all. Also, in that moment, her blink rate is really, really high, but I'm not going to pay too much attention to that because throughout this interview, from the very beginning, her blink rate is often very high. There are patches where her blink rate is closer to normal, which is about 16 to 20 blinks per minute, but there's big stretches, including this one, where that blink rate goes way up. It is consistent with stress, but because it's pretty much part of her baseline during this interview, it's not going to take up that much of my attention. When she says we didn't discuss this in the pre-interview, once again, twice in quick succession, she looks not just where the audience is, but the furthest right of the audience. Now, from all the times I've been in studios similar to this one, the audience would be a lot more in front of her. And with a confirmation glance where you're trying to look good, there'd be more of a stall, more of a smile. That's not what this is. There's two quick darts all the way to the right, which is lending to my theory that there's got to be someone there from her management, from her PR, something like that, that she's just looking at and saying like, we didn't discuss this, and almost looking for help or support or something like that. It's not your typical kind of like trying to save face looking at the audience like this. The other slight possibility might be that there's a monitor in that corner where she's looking at how she appears herself, but there's a couple of reasons I don't think this is the case. One of them is we don't see grooming consistent with that. Typically, when we see someone really trying to figure out if they look good, we might see a bit of a quick grooming as they look at that monitor. Second, again, I've been on quite a few sets like this, whether I was consulting or performing, and it's very, very rare to have the monitor that far from the camera, simply because a lot of people would look at it and the interview would look like this. Typically, there's a monitor very, very close to the camera in such a way that if a celebrity or someone who's on the show looks at that monitor, it still looks like they're towards the camera. So I don't think it's a monitor. I think it's either just a part of the audience she's focusing on or someone for a management team all the way off to the right somewhere. But I'm just naming the monitor for us to explore all the possibilities. At the end, with her last answer, we are getting a lot of indications of stress. Enough that if this was an interrogation or an interview, I would consider this a cluster of deception. Now, please always remember, nobody in the world can detect deception based on behavior. It doesn't exist. We can detect stress and an increased cognitive load when the brain is overthinking, which are symptoms of deception. So they indicate that we might need to ask some more questions there. So basically what I'm saying is clusters of stress and clusters of deception are pretty much the same thing. And right there at the end, we definitely get a cluster of things that indicate that her brain is overworking and she is stressed. First of all, she starts her answer with, I think, to be honest, I'm. So we get those two words repeated. And in the beginning of a sentence, when we get repetition like that, typically it's consistent with trying to buy time to think of an answer. So I think, I'm. It's just extending the time to actually get an answer out and is a great indication of increased cognitive load. There's a lot going on up there. To be honest is called a perception qualifier. And of course, there's a lot of people who use this in their day-to-day conversation when they're being completely truthful. This is why we look for clusters. One thing never means anything. And in this case, to be honest isn't something she's saying too often in this interview. And a perception qualifier is anything where we say like, honestly, to be honest, I honestly believe, I truthfully think. It's just a little word we put in there to kind of come off as more truthful or honest. Finally, we see something in that moment that we're going to talk about a lot in today's video, and it is an adapter. Let's talk about adapters. Now, in the literature, adapters have a lot of synonyms. The term was originally used by Ekman and Friesen, and then they themselves changed it to manipulators because manipulators better describes what an adapter looks like. But in a lot of the other literature and research, they just kept the term adapters, so until today, we use both. Other terms used in the literature and research that are synonymous with adapters are self-touching gestures, self-soothing gestures, pacifiers, and many other words along those lines. So what are adapters? Adapters are any gesture that is repetitive and has a massage-like feeling. So this could be on the face, this could be rubbing on the arms, rubbing the legs, massaging the hands, wringing the hands like this. It can also even be with an object. So if someone's holding a pen and they're massaging the pen in their hands, or a stress ball. Sometimes we see politicians holding onto a podium and their hands might start massaging the podium or the chair that someone's sitting on. These are all self-soothing behaviors. They are used to, like a pacifier or like a stress ball, calm us down and reduce that stress. So adapters seem to be used in stressful moments to reduce anxiety, and the research definitely supports that. Elizabeth Shreve and her colleagues looked over hours of footage of patients talking to their physicians and noticed that in high anxiety topics, although our illustrators, these are the motions that we use to support what we're saying and are usually very synced with our words, the illustrators didn't go up during high anxiety conversations, but the adapters absolutely did. Adapters, or as they called it in this research, hand-to-body self-touching, happened a lot more during high anxiety topics than topics that were not that stressful. So we use adapters when we're feeling high anxiety or stress, but we also use them to conceal stress or anxiety. Ekman and Friesen did a lot of the research on adapters. And in one study, they showed two groups of people, two different videos. One was a very pleasant video, one was a very high-stressed, unpleasant video. Then all these individuals had to speak to someone and describe the video as pleasant. So obviously, one group just had to say what they saw. The other group is still experiencing the stress of that video, plus the added stress of having to tell someone it was pleasant when it wasn't. And in that second group, there were a lot more adapters and self-soothing gestures. So is this enough to assume that if you see someone adapting, that they're being deceptive? Absolutely not. But if someone's relaxed and comfortable, and all of a sudden something happens, and we see those adapters starting, and they're self-soothing, and then maybe they relax again, but the topic comes up again, and once again we see those adapters, well, that shift might indicate that something is stressing them out, or that they're trying to conceal a stress. So going back to Lindsay Lohan, I think it's very easy to see how in this moment she's both experiencing stress and trying to hide stress. Because if we look at that hand, we're starting to see those adapters. In fact, we went from that arm across the body to a little bit more relaxed. Now we're seeing those adapters. And for the rest of this interview, there's rarely a stretch where we're not seeing some sort of stressful or defensive behavior with her hands or with her arms. We're seeing those pacifiers quite a bit. We're seeing those fingers come in quite a bit. At some point, her arm actually goes on the arm of the couch, but we're seeing a pretty tight grip. So I think throughout the rest of this interview, her hands and arms are demonstrating stressful behavior.
Thank you.
Now, do you have addiction problems?
Now you sound like Dr. Phil.
Yeah, I'm sorry. So now, when you go to the rehab, what do they do?
We're here for a movie.
We have to what?
Let's stay on the positive.
Oh,
aside from that side of the positive.
Yeah. All right.
Come on now.
Okay, so speaking of adapters and pacifiers, this is a great clip where we see her hands by her side, not adapting, not pacifying, but kind of clasped together like this. This is a position where it's very easy to pacify because even a slight imperceptible gesture can offer that stress relief. And we do see it. There are moments here where we do see this kind of massaging gesture, and her hand moves away as she speaks and it comes right back here, and I think that there is quite a bit of self-soothing going on there. But what's interesting is right in the beginning of this clip, he's pacifying as well, or adapting. So right in the beginning of the clip, he's looking down, he's thinking like this, and he's wringing his hands like this. I think what's happened here is on a couple of occasions, he's tried to bring up this uncomfortable topic and it hasn't really worked. So he's trying to think to himself, okay, how can I get back on it? So he's thinking here and he just goes right back to that topic. It's almost like he's scheming in that moment. That's what I see that gesture as. When she says, now you sound like Dr. Phil, we see again that stern kind of tone to her, like enough. And although I said her blink rate was very high up until this point to where I'm not really going to pay much attention to it, it's hard to ignore how high her blink rate goes in that moment. Even for someone with a very high blink rate, This is almost a flutter. It's not quite that like brrrt that we see in eye flutters, but it's a very rapid succession of blinks. I think her stress is up again, and I think she's not liking this question at all. Then we see a bunch of behaviors as she says, let's talk about the movie. We're here to talk about the movie. So one, her tone goes to that sweet kind of sympathy voice. Like, we're here to talk about a movie. That's the way she says, like, come on now, let's get off this. Like, she's sympathizing with him. So she's no longer doing this, I can laugh about this, let's joke about this. It's more like, let's talk about the movie. It's sweet. And at the same time, we see something very consistent with sympathy, although it's done a little differently than what we normally see. And that thing that we see in that moment is a head tilt. Now, head tilt is something I talk about a lot on the channel, and it's often misinterpreted. So what we know about head tilt is that we rarely do it when we're uncomfortable. Because we're exposing the neck, which is very vulnerable, we rarely do this when we're uncomfortable. Now, I'm not saying that it only means comfort and it can't mean anything else. So sometimes in the comments I get, no, I've seen people do it when this, or I do it when that. Yes, it can mean a lot of other things. We do it when we're skeptical, we do it when we're curious, we do it when we're annoyed. There's a lot of circumstances that we do it, but we don't do it if we're uncomfortable or highly stressed. In other words, if I'm curious about something, but also at the same time it's stressing me out, I'm more likely to do it this way than this way. So head tilt can mean a lot of things, but we rarely do it if we're uncomfortable or feeling defensive. Now, the other thing about head tilt is not only do we do it when we're comfortable, but it makes the onlooker feel comfortable as well. So when we see someone with a head tilt, this often communicates sympathy, and so it might help calm us down as well and feel at ease. For this reason, head tilting is very often used in acting and in modeling because it sets us at ease, because it makes us feel comfortable. It could be used in modeling, like in more playful poses. We often see it like this in a more relaxed pose, or even in more serious poses, but that head tilt still has a calming feeling to the photo. And in acting, it's often used in scenes to convey comfort or sympathy or connection. And Lindsay Lohan has experience both in modeling and in acting, so it makes a lot of sense that in a moment where she's trying to get sympathy out of someone, she would go to that head tilt. We're here to talk about the movie. Notice how there's a softness there, there's a sweetness to that. But here's what's really interesting. Although she is head tilting, she's head tilting towards him. The way they're sitting is very rare in interactions. Typically when we talk to someone, we're facing them. So that head tilt shows vulnerability. In this case, she's sideways to him. So that head tilt, although often is seen in comfort, in this case, she's tilting towards him, which can be seen as her protecting the neck. There isn't enough literature or research on sideways interactions and the direction of a head tilt for me to tell you with any amount of confidence if this is her protecting or if it's her just using that sympathetic head tilt. But I'd love to get your thoughts in the comments. Let me know. Does it make sense that in this particular case, the head tilt is more like a defensive thing because she's protecting the neck? Or do we still think it's that reflex of that sympathetic head tilt, like we're here to talk about the movie? That kind of sweet head tilt, sympathy that is normally associated to that gesture. Let me know.
I have a list here of things that you've endured. Can I run down a few things here?
Oh, can I see them first?
Yeah, go ahead.
Thanks.
You can read them or not read them.
Okay.
Up here are the
I thought you were going to be nice.
These are the appetizers up here.
As he says, can I run down a few things? There's something really interesting. First, we see a very clear no gesture from her head, like, no, I don't want you to read this. Now, vocally, she kind of jokes about it and says, let me see that, but there's a no there. There's something else really interesting happening in that moment. As she gestures no, she very clearly mouths something. She says something. Now, we don't hear it. I don't know if it's because they cut the mic out in that moment, or she says it so inaudibly because it's only for him or for herself.
Can I run down a few things here?
Oh, can I see?
I don't know what it is. It looks like she might be saying no way or no something, but it's not just like a breath she's taking or something like that. As she shakes her head, there's a very clear something that she's saying. Let me know in the comments what you think she might be saying in that moment, but I'm leaning towards like no way or no something.
I've gone through a lot in life, and I'm looking forward to actually just taking time for me. You can't make a joke of it. That's so mean.
I'm not joking.
No, you're not doing that. We're not doing that.
Maybe one or two?
No, this is my show now. I'm going to come back from rehab and take over your spot.
Oh, man. So, I really like the way she handled that. But with him, I just don't like the way this started with her giving a very heartfelt, like, you know, she's looking to heal. She's excited to get better. And he just has a dismissive, like, doesn't even acknowledge her. Like, yeah, that's going to be great for you. Just goes back to his papers. It gets a laugh. So I guess he knows the comedy timing of it. Like, she's having this real emotional moment. So I'm just going to shuffle through my papers. And that's funny. But to me, I just felt like that would have been a better opportunity to be like, good for you. Like, she's been going on his show since she was 7 years old. Obviously, she looks up to him. I think this would have been a good opportunity to say, we're all so proud of you. You know, you're going to do great. That's just me. Again, he knows so much more about comedy and hosting than I do. So maybe there's something I'm missing there. But let's look at her body language. Again, she looks all the way to that spot on the right. And we get a few things in that moment. First, we get this head shake and the hand like this of pretty much exasperation. Like, oh, like I'm just trying to get off this subject. And this is like several attempts of her trying to change the subject. Very professionally, by the way. It hasn't worked. So I think there's some exasperation there. But we also see something really telling on the face. Of all the emotions that are displayed universally, in other words, of all the basic emotions that anywhere in the world you're likely to see more or less expressed and displayed the same way, only one of them is not symmetric, and it's contempt. So a smile is typically on both sides of the face. Anger happens very symmetrically. Sadness the same, surprise the same. But contempt is only seen on one side of the face. And often in the videos, we talk about contempt looking like this, where that upper corner of one side of the lip goes up like this, causing a line over here. But also, quite frequently, it's just this. So it's not quite this, it's one side doing this. In both cases, you're going to see a line over here, and right there we see it clear as day. As she turns and she's looking once again all the way to her right, we very clearly see that contempt on one side of the mouth.
How about just
no,
just one?
I don't know.
Just not one. No. All right, you showed up. I mean, and
You showed up.
yeah.
Because I wasn't going to.
You know
Oh my God.
well, we.
Come on, be a father figure.
All right, fine. I'm like 3 times your age, for the love of God. Yeah.
Whoa, that's my favorite clip of all the ones we've seen, both in terms of body language and something she says that I think is psychologically brilliant. So first, let's look at the body language, more particularly her hands. So he's still pressing on about reading this list that he really wants to read. She clearly at this point, whether it's verbally or non-verbally, we've seen she doesn't want him to read it. And look at the shift in her hands. So first we have her hands like this, palms up. Now palms up can mean quite a few things, but typically palms up are consistent with not knowing something or being uncertain of something, but they're also used when we want sympathy or we want something from someone. When we're pleading often or asking someone for something, our hands are out like this. And in this case, it could very well be both. I'm not sure I want to do this, and also, please let's not do this. I could believe either one. But then, as he pushes it one more time, there's a shift where her left hand goes up like this. Palm towards someone really doesn't have that many interpretations in nonverbal communication. It's typically a display of assertion, saying something with authority. So sometimes you might see someone go, calm down, or you might say, I have something to say here. So it's something that we're interjecting. We often see it with stop gestures, but stop gestures are usually a little more startled and the fingers extend all the way up like this. So if you're startled by something or you want someone to stop, it's almost a reflex. In this case, it's softer. It's just the hand comes up like this, like enough. And at the same time, we see her shake her head like this, but it's very subtle and she's looking at him. I think that no, it's not for the audience. It's almost for him, like enough now. Like I'm putting my foot down. That's what that gesture really feels like. So it's no surprise to a lot of my subscribers that I practiced therapy for a very long time. And in NLP or hypnotherapy, there's a technique called parts integration or parts negotiation. And it's something we use to knock out phobias or if someone's stuck in an emotional valley that they can't seem to get out of. Now, the basis of this technique is to get the person to focus on a different part of themselves. So let's say someone is dealing with a phobia where they feel stressed around it or weak around it or like they have no power. You have them focus on a different part of themselves in a different context, maybe one situation from the past, and you have them connect with those resources and that part of themselves and apply it to this phobia. And it's used in a lot of different contexts, and I've seen it work wonders. The basis of it is to get someone to focus on a different part of themselves. And she did that here masterfully. Let me explain. So there's a part of David Letterman that is comedian, host, trying to get those ratings up, trying to get a reaction out of the audience, and he's been letting that part run the interview up until this point. He's been digging at her. There are moments where he's lacking that sympathy and he's bringing up these things. But right in that moment, she goes, come on, be a father figure. So basically she's saying, bring out that part of you. I see the host, I see the comedian, but she's known him since she was 7 years old. She was on the show when she was very young. And she's bringing out that part of him who is a father figure to her. And we see it work. He goes, oh, all right, and he puts the papers aside. And from this moment on in the interview, there is a little bit more sympathy. There are moments where he expresses how happy he is for her and how proud he is of her. So I think it's just incredible how she said that and got him to shift gears almost in his head and channel that different part of himself. Because we all have these different personalities, different characters that we bring out in different contexts. So she's just saying, no, I don't want to talk to the host, the comedian. Bring out the father figure.
I just hope to be in a position like you are and happy and healthy.
Well, I think you will be. That's what I'm saying. You win by taking care of your life because people are rooting against you now. They love
They
this.
haven't before?
No, well, but so now the best way to show them that they're wrong
No,
is
I
to
agree.
turn it all upside down.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Stop with that page.
We'll be right back with Lindsay Lohan, ladies and gentlemen.
So now she brilliantly continues down the path of getting him sympathetic towards her because she says, I just want to be in a position like you are, happy and healthy. And he gets off the topic now of trying to poke at this or make jokes about it. And he kind of goes into a speech of how, people are talking bad about you. And by doing this, you prove them wrong and you prove them that you can do this. So now he's on her side. And honestly, I applaud her. The patience it took, how she was positive, going along with the jokes. And, when it came time, she put her foot down and pulled the sympathy out of him. Honestly, I think she did an incredible job. Now we're off the topic. If we look at her body language, we see a lot of what I was saying earlier with pacifying with objects. So that left hand is on the arm of the couch, but it's not relaxed, just sitting there. There's a lot of grabbing and massaging and back and forth. So there's definitely some stress. We also see at some point the fingers come inwards like this. This is called digital flexion when the fingers come inwards. It is a sign of stress. So there's still, even if her arms have opened up now, there's still signs of stress in the hand.
This opens Friday. Scary movie. You have to be in rehab May 2nd. Are you going to be there? You'll be there, right? Who's taking you to rehab? You don't want to talk about that either, right?
Oh, God. Jimmy Fallon.
Jimmy Fallon.
And you.
Jimmy and I will drive her to rehab.
Oh my God, can you imagine being in her position? We went through the discomfort. On numerous occasions, we tried to respond in different ways. Finally, we got David Letterman off the topic. We go to commercial break, we come back, we're talking about the movie now, we're past it, and he brings up rehab again. And she just freezes up. And honestly, I don't blame her at this point. In last week's video, we talked about the responses to a threat. And there's freeze, fight, flight, and then some people talk about fawn as well. Well, let's look at what she tried. She tried fight on quite a few occasions. There was that assertion. There was, more kind of stern tone of saying, no, we're not talking about this. So we tried that. Then she tried fawn. In fact, this was such a great example of fawn because she abandoned her own ideal needs or wants and kind of gave in to the jokes and played along, and she remained sweet, and she tried to appeal to his sympathy and to get that mercy out of him. And that didn't seem to work on the long run. It worked for a little bit, It seemed to have worked, but then he came right back to it. Then we have flight. I mean, where's she gonna go? She tried to avoid the topic every now and then and tried to, after a little bit of humor, tried to steer away from it. But ultimately, she can't really get away from this interview, so she has to sit there. So here, I think we're just seeing the freeze of abandonment. She's just freezing up there because there really isn't another option for her. And this kind of hopelessness in her that we're seeing reminds me a lot of Robert Downey Jr. in the analysis from last week, where they both kind of have this sense of, what's going on here? I'm just giving up on this. I also want you to notice how much she's looking away from him at this point. It wasn't happening that much up until now. A lot of the time her energy was directed there. Every now and then she would look away. Before the commercial break, it was interesting how her immediate reflex was to look away and then look back at him, which we rarely see. Usually during these interviews, the celebrity will look at the audience with a smile of acknowledgement, and then they'll turn to the host and pleasantly talk to them, or they will immediately talk to the host. She didn't. She turned away and then to him. And in this case, almost in the entire part of that answer towards the end, she's looking away from him. She looks at him to grab his hand, and I think, again, that's her trying to appeal to his sympathy. But the rest of the time, she is literally, her head is completely turned away from him. So I think it's just, at this point, like, she's just run out of options of how to diffuse this topic.
No, but I don't want people to think that I'm making a joke of that.
No, you shouldn't make a joke
I'm not.
because this could be good for you. It will be good for you.
Yeah, it will.
Yeah.
It's not like a joking matter.
No, but I mean, but what in life can't we make light of, honestly? Really, we're all...
No, I'm fine with making light of myself. That's why I want to
you're
walk out with a tag
sport.
on.
Yeah, I mean, we never thought we'd see you again, honestly, you know, because of the jokes and stuff, but yet you have enough spine, enough sense of yourself, enough poise to come out here and talk to me.
Thank you.
Thank you for everything.
Thank you.
There she is.
Thank you.
We'll be right back with Pete Lee, ladies and gentlemen.
I wanted to look at that clip not because there's a lot of great stuff happening with the nonverbal communication, but I think we're getting a real good summary of each of their thought processes. So she's saying she doesn't want to make fun of this, of the whole rehab thing, because it's sensitive to some people. Then she goes on to say she's okay making fun of herself, but she doesn't want to make light of rehab or dealing with addiction or anything like that. Whereas he is expressing that, what can't we make fun of? Like, everything's on the table. And you had the spine and the strength to come out here. So he is actually acknowledging for a moment there that this is what he does. He grills people, he throws humor at people, he makes inappropriate jokes, and she was good enough to come out here. And I think in his way, this is him showing her respect. And again, there's a difference between understanding something and excusing something. So if you're watching this going, no, that was inappropriate, the way he just kept pushing at that, I get it. I'm with you. Someone can argue that maybe he wasn't so tuned into her discomfort because, he's looking at his papers, he's focused on the interviews, and he's not looking for adapters and lip compressions and high blink rate, so he wasn't aware. But I think even in the way that she was answering, it was pretty obvious that she was there to talk about the movie and didn't want to talk about all these other things. So, yeah, once again, I'm personally not a huge fan of the way this interview went, but he doesn't need me to be a fan. He has millions of those. Finally, I really took notice of something quite fascinating right at the end. They're shaking hands as they're saying thank you for the interview, good night everyone, and we see her left hand come on top of his hand, and it's not one of these. Some people shake your hand and they kind of hold it with two hands. It's not that. Her fingers come inwards and grip only his hand, and the second she gets a chance, she removes his hand from hers. Like, this is crazy how for someone who's being positive and friendly, like, that hand just shoots up like this. And to me, it's demonstrating straight up like trying to get that hand off of hers. I'm not 100% sure these are intentional things, but there's definite signs for me that she's trying to keep some distance there. So although she was very gracious throughout this whole thing, although since then, I'm not aware of her coming out and speaking up about any discomfort. I think there are definite signs throughout this thing that there were moments of stress and discomfort and wanting to put distance there, despite her being gracious about it. Well, there it was, a really great interview to demonstrate the nonverbal communication of comfort versus discomfort. Also some great lessons there on how to handle a conversation like this. I think she did such a great job, stayed positive, fun, and deflected where she could, joked where she could, and at the end of the day, I think she looked really professional and came off looking great vibe. Let me know in the comments what you thought of this one, and I look forward to seeing you on the next one.